Hi, I'm Erica Ramirez, founder of Illy and host of What About Your Friends, a brand new show on the Ringer Podcast Network dedicated to the many lives of friendship and how it's portrayed in pop culture. Every Wednesday on the Ringer Dish feed, I'll be talking with my best friend, Stephen Othello, and your favorites from within the Ringer and beyond about friendships on TV, in movies, pop culture, and our real lives. So join me every Wednesday on the Ringer Dish feed, where we try to answer the question TLC asked back in the day, what about your friends?
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day, or hiking, or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, you're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago. I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Read, Write, Own, Building the Next Era of the Internet, a new book from entrepreneur and startup investor Chris Dixon. If you're listening to this podcast, you know what it's like to be part of a community of fans. You value the people who play, perform, and create for everyone. Well, what if there are more ways to support them, more ways to be a fan? And what if you had even more ways to connect with the teams, artists, and other creators that you love? Even though creators make the internet valuable, how much value do they get for their work? Well, that's mostly up to a few big tech companies. Shouldn't creators get more from the platforms they make successful? More value, but also more say, more control, more ownership? Read, Write, Own explores an alternative future for the internet, one that reclaims control for creators, fans, listeners, and gamers, the people who not only use the internet, but make it useful. Read, Write, Own imagines an internet built by us for us. So order your copy of the book today or learn more at readwriteown.com.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, straight from the cleansing waters of Mandalore, it's Andy Greenwald!
I mean, it is getting pricey. Because, you know, like the Instagram influencers have found it.
Yeah, I know.
The healing properties.
It's like the blue pools of Croatia.
It's like, yeah, suddenly everyone's in Portugal.
Yeah.
I get it. By the way, we got a big show. But I do think that people have appreciated, maybe not as much as we've appreciated, being back in the studio. And one thing that I think that I missed, that I don't think the listeners will ever really understand, is that right as you do the intro, you have an expression on your face that's like, is he really committed to doing this podcast today?
Me?
Yeah.
To you?
It's like a little bit like Division III college basketball coach being like, what am I getting today? You know, like there are other things maybe.
I never doubt you.
I appreciate that.
It's been 20 years, 25 years.
Yeah.
And you never call in sick.
27 years.
Andy, today on the podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about Barry ending. And this season of endings that we're entering into in the springtime with Succession, Ted Lasso, and Barry.
The
Thought
Watch
we might
podcast,
do a
perhaps.
quick check-in on what's up with Apple TV. As a venture, just get under the hood, look at what's going on there. They have like 4 or 5 shows coming out between now and May, with some incredibly eye-popping talent involved. But like, I want to chat a little bit about whether or not we think that the Apple TV message is getting through to people. We're going to do maybe... We're going to do any Mandalorian?
We could note it.
We can note Mandalorian, and then we're going to talk about Perry Mason. So Perry Mason's first episode of the second season came out on Monday. The second episode is coming out next Monday, obviously. It's a show that you and I both, I would almost go as far as say love. We really, really are into this show. I like the first season quite a bit. I think the second season is a huge leap. And we're going to be joined by a special guest today to talk about it, and that is Matthew Rhys.
The titular Perry Mason.
That's right.
One of my favorite things also, not just to have Matthew Rhys, who's one of our favorite actors and a lovely guy. I love it when guests come back on the podcast, but you're like, has he ever been on the podcast?
You should just send me a list of everybody you've interviewed on the podcast.
I think that you should know, like multiplication tables. You should just have that available to you. You know?
Let's start with just briefly noting HBO put up the trailer for the new season of Barry, and it will be the last season of Barry. So Barry, obviously, for anybody, I guess, spoilers for Barry, but Barry is in prison. It's in the trailer. And I think that when that season, the previous season ended, and that was like sort of Barry becoming incarcerated was obviously in the cards. I think this is such a sick way to end the show. And I just want to say to the people out there calling their own shots and being like, this is the end of the story I wanted to tell, I salute you. There's nothing wrong with doing Grey's Anatomy for 20 years. I think it's awesome. And I think like I'm really into shows being long running propositions.
Yeah.
But damn, when you can just be like, this is the story I wanted to tell, and I got other stuff I want to do.
You're really forcing my hand for the podcast announcement I was not going to make today. But, you know, this is the story I wanted to tell.
Yeah. You had one more sort of half-hearted endorsement of some piece of pop culture.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm surprised. So I thought Fourth and Final is the thing. And I thought that the Barry information was not new. It's being treated like a surprise, but I thought that was communicated when the show was renewed.
Well, I know that he wrote 3 and 4 pretty, if not entirely together.
I think they did.
Yeah. I don't know that they ever came out and publicly said that.
It seemed pretty clear by the nature of...
Well, I mean, the thing with Barry is that if they had wanted to, they could have just said, now Barry is getting in a car and driving to Oklahoma and will start a life as a bartender. Like the Barry character and the sort of cinematic world that Bill Hader inhabits with that show and how it can be a broad comedy or a thrilling action movie or a horror show or a dreamscape. It's kind of that bucket show where you can throw anything you want into it. And so if they wanted to do Barry in the Florida Keys, I would have watched it.
I would TiVo that shit. But yeah, it would be well positioned to be a darker poker face. But I do think that you get into that kind of tricky area where the things that to my mind make Barry very, very special, not just entertaining, are related to the fact that no matter how broad the comedy gets, Hader is laser focused on the morality of the story he's telling. Like that does seem to matter to him. And the show does seem to be about essentially a monster who... You know, the show has also, during its run, told us things about his trauma, about his reasons for doing things, even tried to show us his point of view, that it kind of makes sense if you believe that he loves Mr. Cousineau, which he does, et cetera, et cetera. But to walk away from the baggage, I think, would be contradicting the things that made him interested in the character in the first place. I also wonder if the show is so wildly and well plotted. And from what we heard in the announcement of the 4th season, Hader directed this whole season himself. He went full auteur. Shout out Sam Esmail. And that's tiring.
Yeah. That's tiring. It's also exciting for us as viewers, though.
Very exciting. But it does create an event horizon that I don't know if this podcast is ready for, which is, I believe it's May 28th. If things hold, if schedules hold, if there's no scheduled rest days, no slipping during pre-games like Kevin Durant last night, Succession and Barry are going to end on the same night.
That's crazy.
That's not fair to us, really. Like, this is the studio. We talked to Casey. No, it's not. They all look the same. But the point is, Casey, what are you doing to us?
Well, and then they'll also be airing on the same Sunday nights, which is what we have been longing for, to get back to our, tonight I am sitting on the couch for 2 hours to watch must-see television, right?
That's true. I do love that. That will be really, really exciting.
And challenging for you.
Very challenging. You saw me sweat a little bit. But it almost does the shows a disservice to end two Pantheon shows on the same night.
I think it's cool. It's cool.
Look at you.
Yeah. Why don't we...
You're very open to what the world brings you. You know, I think that's a healthier attitude.
I just don't think that we have very many captive experiences anymore. Wow. Like even Ted Lasso and Mandalorian, which are two of the biggest sort of cultural phenomenons, if not like numbered hits on TV right now. Like Mandalorian goes up in the middle of the night on Tuesday. I don't even know what time Ted Lasso airs, quote unquote, but it's like you can watch it at your leisure.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the idea that these two things will be careening towards an ending is very 2013-14 vibes.
It is. And for as much as we are big fans of many other shows on the home box office network, whether it's White Lotus, which is coming back.
I like the Maximum home box office network personally.
Or Perry Mason.
Yeah.
Oh, you like home box office maximum.
Yes.
That's very formal. I like that a lot. Home box office Maximilian.
Yeah.
What is in the hopper for them that will feel like this, in terms of shows building to something so that it feels like an event? I mean, I do think from talking to Casey, that is always their goal. I do think they understand that type of show relationship week to week and then season to season significantly matters to them.
I feel like we could concern troll, but then it's like Winning Time's going to come back and House of the Dragon will eventually be back. And
I don't mean they don't have anything in the hopper that we're going to love and talk about and obsess over, but specifically these two shows are maybe overly important to us in the way we like to watch TV and podcast about it, in that over a period of years, we have grown incredibly attached to and fond of, and that relationship with the shows building to that moment that feels like this is a sports Super Bowl kind of, sorry, all Super Bowl are sports. I keep that because I deserve to learn from my mistakes.
This is as if they played a sport at the Super Bowl.
It's almost as if, what if in sports there was a championship and you played games up to a last game and whoever won that game was the winner?
Yeah.
What if we did sports like that?
Yeah. I'll let Bill know.
Free idea.
Sports are.
Free idea.
I wanted to mention this. I had like a little bit of a thing about like, these shows ending. And I don't have a thing. I was just noting that it was happening.
You were going to play your fiddle.
And, I was reading some of the Ted Lasso stuff that show, I believe, comes back this week.
It's also ending too, right? Didn't he say that?
Oh, this is the final season, Ted Lasso, yeah. And Sudeikis has been very clear that this is the show this is the story he wanted to tell. Like, this is like this
It premieres next week, the 15th.
Next week. And that this was like a sort of 3-part story. I had kind of wondered whether or not Richmond was going to do the entire Leicester City arc. So for people who don't know, in the Premier League, Leicester City was this kind of, underdog team. They had gone down out of the Premier League. They had been promoted. And then they went on to miraculously win the Premier League in a way that like no one could have possibly imagined and may never happen again. And I had just noted with interest that was that Richmond, the team that Ted Lasso manages, was on that kind of journey.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like they're going to do that. I thought maybe it would be 4 seasons and that like he would win the Premier League. But I think that obviously the soccer or football is secondary to Ted Lasso at this point, where it's like a little bit more about the characters and a little bit more about the interpersonal relationships between the people around the football.
Is that disappointing to you? Do you wish there was just liquid football?
Don't give away my idea of Ted Lasso spinoff. It's just liquid football, and it's nobody from Ted Lasso. It's just me managing.
Yes. What if your take was, what if TV shows were more like sports? That's your.
But it kind of goes to a larger conversation I wanted to have with you about Apple.
Yeah.
Because Ted Lasso is inarguably the flagship show of Apple TV.
Mm-hmm.
I think Morning Show was conceived as such, but it didn't feel like that show. This is the thing. I want to say it didn't feel like that show made an impact or like crossed over in any way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that matters to Apple literally at all. And I also don't know how to gauge that, because I'm sure there is like a huge, maybe not particularly online, group of people who are like, Morning Show is one of my favorite shows, or I watch Morning Show every week, or Morning Show is like the most entertaining thing I've had in my life.
And by the way, Morning Show isn't done. It's coming back.
Yeah.
But go on.
But without Ted Lasso, Apple doesn't necessarily have that flagship show ready to step up.
Well, yes and no. I think the thing that's confounding about Apple and its place in the television marketplace, it continues to be here's an example. It's always been the same thing that has been confusing, which is it's just so much richer than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a vanity project, and it doesn't matter. I don't mean to say that the incredible list of creators are doing things in vain. Like, there have been great Apple TV shows. There are many more on the way. It just continues to be inescapable that it's almost a lark for them. And the reasonings behind what they do and why they do what they do and what they put their clout behind does remain opaque to a degree that it doesn't, even with something like Netflix, which has historically been very, very reticent to share data or decision-making. But because it is more attuned to or affected by the economy or the stock market or share prices, we can infer things. We see the decisions that they make, and there's been upheaval, clearly, that we've talked about a lot. Talked about it on the podcast. It's kind of like, you're going to love this, and 15% of the audience is going to love this too. But I've been so sports heavy on this show thus far. I got to zag. So we got to give something out to the geek culture. Have you ever heard of a Marvel comic character called the Beyonder? You ever heard about that?
I want you to be like, straight up, this one goes out to my mouth breathers out there.
This is my... Come on. The Android
All my
Dungeon
guys
Hive.
who've never had a date. This one's for you. Do you guys know Beyonder?
Listen,
They don't even let you on Bumble, dog.
What's the name of this character you're doing now? Where you're the fucking alpha who's just like, this Ted Lasso has too many feelings in it. I just want slide tackles and running the table. Holler at me when you get a date, nerds. This is good. I think Matthew Rhys is going to enjoy this energy.
Yeah, for sure.
I think there was a big comic event that actually is relevant again soon in the movies called Secret Wars, the original one in the 80s, where basically...
That one's going to be written by Jeff Loveness, right?
I feel like that I laughed just because anything involving Jeff Loveness being like, hey, I'm on this one. Here's some interviews about my feelings is worth... I think that's true.
Jeff Loveness weighs in on Ted Lasso season 3. Is this the story they wanted to tell?
Too much football. Anyway, it means something different now than it did then. But in the 80s, they created this character called the Beyonder, who was just like a dude with a jerry curl and a white leisure suit, who was an infinitely powered god alien who could do whatever he wanted. And then the idea of him being like, hey, Thor and Spider-Man, let's do something. And they were like, you can do anything you want. That's the TV landscape. That was not worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
To make that analogy.
But I think it was the funnious part of this pod so far.
I think we've had some other good... I liked it when you laughed when I said I was ending the podcast. Because you'll cry later when we find out this was the moment. All of this is to say, Apple continues to greenlight things and buy things and attract talent at a degree that is almost obscene.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of projects in their docket that are exciting to us, film and TV. We're going to be watching this stuff. But their relationship to the things they've made is interesting. So Ted Lasso, to your point, everyone was scratching their heads when Jason Sudeikis and his collaborators and Bill Lawrence sold this commercial character from NBC Universal.
An NBC sports character that was supposed to be a promo thing for the Premier League on NBC.
And I think anecdotally we heard even within Apple, they were like, well, what's this? They were still in the throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks phase. As we've learned historically with TV networks and streamers, you never can predict the thing that's going to be your thing. And that became their defining show, won awards, and they were all in on it. To a degree, I think you're right, that the morning show, which was really like Netflix with House of Cards, like we're going to outbid everyone and we're going to do something splashy. It was a different sort of thing. Severance was really big for them. And I don't just mean numbers-wise, because we don't know, but that really laid down a marker in terms of the creative community, in terms of awards. And we've seen that borne out with how they've treated it. There have been tons of ads, tons of FYC stuff. You go into an Apple store, like Severance is making its presence felt, and I would imagine the second season will be greeted.
Go into an Apple store, it's a super long hallway, and then Christopher Walken's in the back.
Dancing. Yeah. Just passionately making out with John Turturro on 1,000 screens. I bring this up because the thing that is most disturbing is a loaded word. It's just been really weird to see. They spend a ton of money on their shows, and they get a lot of talent. And then if they change their mind or if they're not invested, you can kind of tell. I'm not bringing up Hello Tomorrow because I wish the show ill. We love Billy Crudup. I have met the guys who make the show. Stephen Falk from You're the Worst worked on it. That pilot is beautiful. Production is outrageous. Jonathan Entwistle directed it. You get the feeling. This is anecdotal. We are not crunching numbers here. But isn't there a feeling like, did this even happen? Like, it does not feel supported in a way that an expensive show starring an Emmy Award winner might be. And I do think that if this was, you get into that weird conversational place where, well, if this was an AMC show under our stewardship, of course, they would be pushing it harder because they would have committed a lot to it. Then there's also the flip side. They couldn't have afforded to commit all this to it.
Yeah, you mentioned the Netflix thing with House of Cards. This kind of reminds me of the era of Netflix, which we very well may still be in, but I think Netflix generally makes different shows now, different kind of shows. I still find out about Netflix shows that I watch. I was making the list of the things that I have watched more than one episode of so far, and there's several Netflix shows on there. I find out about them almost exclusively within the ecosystem of Netflix. So it'll either be recommended to me because I watched something else, or I see that it's in the tiles on Netflix. But it is not because I caught a Netflix trailer on YouTube, or because there was an ad for something, or a billboard, or even an article, honestly. So like I'm watching this Netflix show right now called Red Rose, which is like basically a Black Mirror episode tacked on top of Skins.
Wow.
And it's pretty stressful, honestly, but it's really good.
I can't believe you have time to watch that amidst your heavy diet of Saul Bellow documentaries. What a life.
I feel like that's starting to happen with Apple, where like I know about Apple shows from Apple press releases, but I don't know that there's a bunch of stuff coming out in the next couple of weeks to months. Big Door Prize, which is a Chris O'Dowd heartwarming comedy, I think. Silo, which is the one I'm most excited about, which is this dystopian sci-fi show that Graham Yost is showrunning, and Graham Yost obviously is the person behind Justified, and is just like one of the great kind of TV and movie screenwriters of the last 20, 30 years.
Can I just weigh in for a second? Silo looks sick.
Yeah.
Like that trailer is a great trailer.
Yeah.
Who knows what the show is going to be, but you don't often see everything, all the pieces come together.
It's basically like the remnants of human society live underground after an ecological disaster, but then there starts to be a suspicion about what they have been told about said ecological disaster or the state of the world.
Is it Lost from Desmond's perspective?
Right.
But it's Rebecca Ferguson, it's Tim Robbins, Rashida Jones, David Oyelowo. That's wild to me. That's just something else that they have that I guess is based on books that I didn't know about.
Tack on to that Extrapolations, which is this Scott Burns show. Scott Burns wrote Contagion, has worked with Soderbergh a bunch. And Scott Burns has, honestly, a cast that if it was in a movie, you would think it was a parody of a movie cast.
Yep.
Where it's like Meryl Streep and Ed Norton and Kit Harington and Sienna Miller and all these people making appearances. This is like an anthology show about climate change that seems to be an interlocking kind of casting forward in the next 50 years.
Also looks incredible.
Forrest Whitaker is in this. And if you look at we spent a lot of time pissing and moaning about special effects, but I have to say Apple does not cheap out when it comes to this stuff.
No, I guess the other thing that you probably hear in our voice when we talk about this is much like a leisure-suited space god, we don't know what to make of this. There's just a seemingly endless tap of wild-looking stuff that they are investing in, and it's tough to get a handle on what they want out of their service, what they're trying to be, because no one else would have given Scott Burns the carte blanche to do Extrapolations. No one would. I mean, I'm sure HBO took a meeting. I'm sure people had good intentions, but the cost alone, I just don't see it versus what the reward is. And so, but maybe the answer to this is, before I answer your question, is we're seeing a service that doesn't need to play by those rules where they have to be a thing. You don't need to go there to expect a certain thing.
Aesthetically, or I don't know, it's aesthetically or in terms of editorial curation, I do feel like that there is an undercurrent of affirmative or important programming. Apple greenlights stuff that they think ultimately trickles up to their brand values. Their forward-facing brand values.
And
right?
this is
spending $200 million, or I'm just throwing out a number. I have no idea how much Extrapolations cost. And we'll get into that show later. But that is about the dangers of climate change, which most big corporations at least say that they're concerned about.
Yes.
That is an investment in an idea that is important to Apple.
That affirms their brand.
And if money is literally no object to somebody, maybe that's...
Yeah, and we've heard both anecdotally and just directly that what's communicated in meetings with Apple, whether you're pitching something to them or whether you're in the notes process, is the slow, insistent curve towards affirmation. They kind of... There's a Spielbergian sentiment to the things that they want to do. I mean, Coda won Best Picture. That is very on brand for them. Ted Lasso, despite what the people maybe who'd come over from Sony and were used to a different type of studio thing, that is their brand and it is what they want. big ticket sci-fi.
It was disappointing for me as somebody who wanted to see 7 episodes dedicated to set piece practice. Just to see guys take free kicks.
I'm sad for you that was taken from you.
Yeah.
But like these big sci-fi stuff, whether it's Foundation, which is coming back, or Sam's Metropolis, which is coming to life finally for them, that all fits within that brand. I think what's curious is how it's almost like, is Severance a model for what they want to be, which is we're playing with HBO here. We want to do this sort of stuff. Or is it an outlier in the way that something like Master of None proved to be an outlier for Netflix, where it was like, we are going to do this and we feel good about it, and it's going to get us awards and acclaim and interest from a certain type of viewer, but it is not part of our larger brand strategy. And then looking down the road, Apple won the bidding war for the new Vince Gilligan show, which is going to star Ray Seahorn, and it is not, it's non-Albuquerque. I mean, maybe he'll end up shooting there, but it is not extended Heisenberg universe stuff. There's 2 reasons why it ended up there. The people who run Apple TV used to run Sony, and Sony made Breaking Bad. There's a history of a relationship there. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is they outbid everyone else. Mm-hmm. Does Vince Gilligan's brand and what we want from him fit the Apple metric, or does it even matter?
Does Shining Girls fit the Apple metric? Like,
is Shining Girls coming back?
But Shining Girls was not an affirmative show. Like, it wasn't it's great to be kind.
It was not, and this brings us all the way back. Did it get a huge push?
Right.
This is not the steadiest footing for us to be on as deeply informed, fact-based podcasters, to be like, doesn't feel like it's being supported. We don't know that.
But let me do some good podcasting then.
Ooh.
This is illustrative of HBO has had this run for the last half a year, pretty much going back to Winning Time last year, at least, if not before that, where it's just like, man, every 10 weeks there's just another really banger show that's on Sunday nights, Yep. And if it's not, even if it's not entirely your thing, it's kind of worth checking out. And you then find out like, oh, most of the people I work with, or like people in my family or friends or whatever, are watching Last of Us or whatever. Like, they've now had the headlock on for 2-3 quarters now. Apple is putting out probably the sum total of the budgets that they're spending on Extrapolation, Silo, The Last Thing You Told Me, Liaison, Ghosted, the movie, Schmigadoon Season 2, Big Door Prize, all the Ted Lasso, all the stuff that's coming out in a relatively small bunch.
Yeah.
I would imagine dwarf most HBO shows with the exception of House of the Dragon.
You mean budget-wise? Oh, without question. I mean, we didn't even talk about like Shantaram. That's such a big show, 12 episodes. And
on location in India. Yeah.
And it exists.
Yeah.
That's something that definitely was made.
So I think obviously you and I are both very excited about Extrapolations. We're both very excited about Silo. I do feel like for our sins, we need to watch Liaison, the Vincent Cassel spy show.
I think that's probably true. City on Fire, also from our buddy Josh Schwartz, is coming soon. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not negative.
Is there a trailer for City on Fire? Like, when is it?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's coming out in May. I'm not negative about any of this stuff.
Me neither. I'm just curious.
I'm curious, and I do think that...
Like a Beyonder, almost.
There you go. I love it. It is... There's a larger conversation lurking behind this that will become less subtext and more text over the next few weeks as we get closer to a potential writer's strike, and just the sort of ripple effects of this really weird, really unpleasant contraction moment in TV becomes more evident. That it feels like weird, like late capitalism stuff where it's like no one can get anything made, and then you get everything made and all the money you want, and you win the Apple lottery, and Apple's like shrug emoji. You got to do it, but no one got to see it.
Right.
Now, look, is it marketing that kept Shantaram from becoming an international sensation? Probably not. I don't know. I did not watch it, and I apologize to the people who busted their ass for like a decade, literally more, to get that on the screen. But there is a creeping feeling that I don't think is just me in this podcast booth being like, this is all really hard and needless, and what's it for? It's not a good. It's not good.
Let's
vibes
have this conversation
in
right 2 months.
Once we're done watching the next 32 amazing shows.
Well, I mean, after Silo, Extrapolations, and Ted Lasso, let's do a gut check on this.
Yeah, not just the Apple part, but like, okay, so who's making what and why is a good thing to talk about.
We don't have to spend a lot of time on Mandalorian, but I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
I thought Rachel Morrison, the director, did a really good job on this episode. There were some really cool shots. I actually thought even though it was obviously shot in the volume, it kind of looked like a real sun was hitting real characters' faces at times. And she's obviously this hugely accomplished director of photography previously.
Also just little things like
she shot Black Panther and she's like really, really good.
Yeah, an amazing like Hall of Fame DP who's transitioning to being a director full-time. Yeah, little things like fireworks glinting off of the cockpit. Like I love that. Like is it real, quote unquote? It doesn't matter. It feels really good. It's artistically conceived and aesthetically successful.
I don't have like a ton to say about the Darksaber or Bo-Katan and like what's going on there. I do want to say, just Filoni, hear me out. This is my new segment.
Oh, great.
Filoni, hear me out.
Mm-hmm.
And spoilers for the second episode of Mandalorian.
What about Favre? Do you want Favreau listening, or is this earmuffs for Favreau?
Dave.
Okay.
Just Dave.
Yeah.
I know Favreau wrote it, but Dave, I'm talking to you. It's time to build the great bridge between the Mandalorian and Andor universe. And when you had an opportunity to do so, when he's like, go fly back to Bo-Katan's planet and get her, little Grogu. And Grogu's like, my arms, they're not big. I cannot fly. But it's like, you got a droid for that, right?
Yeah.
And Grogu's way of navigating the galaxy is just by like pointing at the planet.
Yeah.
How fucking sick would it have been if Grogu was like pointed at the Miami Andor planet?
Yeah.
Where Cassian got arrested and was just like,
I think I want to go there. Yeah. And they start playing that like super sick Mario Kart music.
And then it basically becomes like a 20-minute sequence like out of Billy Crystal and Gregory Hines' Running Scared when they go down to the Keys.
Incredible movie. Also, Shine Sweet Freedom.
Yeah.
The soundtrack to that
Shine
movie.
Sweet Freedom's playing. Baby Yoda on the beach, sipping Mai Tais, hanging out with all sorts of
tropical
characters.
Space bugs.
Yeah, exactly. And then he goes and gets Bo-Katan and gets everything settled down.
I would embrace that for any number of reasons. I want more Ando content.
Oh, Andalorian.
Yeah, it's there. I mean, again, like you have an entire galaxy and you have Mandalore, Andor, and Endor. It's like, guys, use the whole dictionary. So many letters. Anyway, I would appreciate that because then there would at least be some like inspired madness or poetry to the navigation systems of this show, because it is the thing that I'm starting to bump up against with it is because it's the volume.
Starting to.
And because, we're just starting today. Every day is a new day for us. You're in the volume. You can go anywhere. You can show anything. You're already existing in a space universe that, to my mind at least, I'm sure that like the hardcore non-Bumble users of our audience can tell me otherwise. But like, it seems like the fuel isn't an issue. You just press a button and you can go anywhere in a galaxy.
There's not a lot of gas stations out there.
Which also makes collisions like when they were temporarily fighting the pirate Broccoli King last week. And he's just like, I've got you now. And he's like, ding. And then he just goes 10 billion space miles away. And the Broccoli guy's like, arg, I'll get you next time in infinite space. So it's just kind of limitless. So that the fact that when they got, I get why we went to visit Amy Sedaris to be like, hey, do you have the thing? And she's like, nope, bit. See you next time. Fine. Everybody's happy to see her. But when they get back to like Mandalore space, and he's like, see this dot on my tiny screen? That's where we were last week. I'm like, this is an inefficient use of space fuel.
So your concern is the energy crunch.
Yes.
Yeah.
1,000,000%. But it's not just I could do that.
Yeah.
That's available to me to go on that tear.
Okay.
It's really more just like...
What happens when Gazprom turns off the faucet? You know what I'm saying?
When the Empire is like, nope, sorry, Western Coruscant, you can't have this anymore.
Yeah.
What's Chancellor Biden going to do then? Huh? Rip from the headlines of the show. No, it's just more like, it's just kind of janky.
You know, somewhere a guy has his AirPods in and he's got his nose deep in an issue of Beyonder. And he just looked up. He's like, don't you understand how fuel cells in the galaxy work?
Issue of Beyonder? It's like Steve Buscemi holding up a comic book called Comic Book. Is that what you're thinking this is? Hey, what's up, fellow geeks? Right. So... No. My point is just like the show is at its best when the little baby Yoda's doing some stuff and Din Djarin's fighting some guys, and then when it becomes like, go see the lady we saw last week sitting on a throne for my magic sword that will unite people who don't take their masks off. I'm like, okay, it loses me. I like my energy, and I know this might not be the most popular opinion, but I like this show best as a case of the week. Essentially children's show. Yeah. And I say that not because I'm still standing for Bluey. Let's not say children's show. Let's say family show. Like anybody can watch this.
I don't think that this show should be every week Mando and Yoda go to a new place where townsfolk are being harassed by a villain and Mando Seven Samurais it.
Okay.
But if that was the show,
yeah,
I don't know that I would be disappointed.
I know. It was that show.
I know.
Let's go to the Squid Planet and eat some. There was.
But now it's about more than that. It's about the Darksaber and its legacy, and it's about whether or not you believe in a creed or not.
We don't need to spend any more portions of a podcast bemoaning the thing that exists that isn't the version of it that we would have wanted. What's a little bit tantalizing about this is that Mandalorian was never going to be my number one favorite show on television, but for the first season, I think it was in my top 10 because it was this. And I do think it had a very high acclaim because it did bring back something to Star Wars that I think Star Wars needed, which was a little bit of whimsy, a little bit of exploration, non-weighted by whatever. And, we're not
drawing down on these big Greedos, just putting them in their place,
We're not pretending that the weird space Muppets we're not pretending they don't exist. We're still going to the Squid Planet and drinking chowder from the tube, straight, hot and fresh from the tube, from the chowder tube.
Should we talk a little bit about Perry Mason before Matthew Rhys joins us?
I think we should.
One of the highlights of my young year so far, aside from testing negative for the coronavirus after an extended period of time, was you just being like, I fucking love Perry Mason.
We should have done it like Ozark, right?
I know.
You should have
surprised me.
I really just threw it into a text.
Perry Mason returned, as I said, on Monday. You're hearing this on Thursday. And, I think for the first season, it was a little slow out of the gates. So this has been a property that has been in development for a very long time. Robert Downey and his wife, Susan Downey, a big-time producer, they've kind of shepherded it for a while.
It was supposed to be him.
Nick Pizzolatto wrote the pilot, I believe.
He was going to work on it. This was supposed to be Downey's television star turn.
And I think that the first season, you can see the push and pull of all the various things that they kind of wanted this to be. Should this be the anti-hero Perry Mason? Should this be the origin story of a legendary character? At what point do we want this guy to get into a courtroom? And it's a long few hours before he turns into Perry Mason.
Yeah.
And when he turns into Perry Mason in the first season, but even before that, I enjoyed. And the reason I enjoyed it, not only because of the just obvious satisfaction of having a courtroom drama that's reliably, well written, is because it was taking this sort of widescreen view of society in the 1930s in Los Angeles and saying, how is that reflective of our times now? But also, how can we investigate sort of the history of this place being built, Chinatown-esque in some ways. And I think that kind of idea is deeply infused into the second season immediately. As soon as it starts, you're like, oh, they're trying to get the Dodgers to come to town. Yeah. And there's Chavez Ravine, and there's these rich despots who are living in Beverly Hills, and they've got the city and
they're living on top of a place that has always been deeply Mexican, and that fraught relationship between race and class. It runs right into the best version of itself in the season.
You're exactly right.
I you characterized it well. I admired so much of it, especially Matthew Rhys's performance, and a lot of the performances, great
Juliet
actors.
Rylance, Chris Chalk, yeah.
I love them. And I love them even more in the season because this season it really feels like it is becoming what it was meant to be. And it's such an interesting, it's not a time capsule because it's alive in front of us, but it's an interesting artifact of a very strange and fluid moment in television where you feel the forces of the last 10 years of prestige TV weighing on it, in that it's Perry Mason. It is a IP character doing essentially a courtroom drama, but HBO is doing it. So what does that mean? It means the budgets go up. It means the attention to detail and period go way up. But HBO is also developing it through the 20-teens, which means that it has to have a level of darkness. It has to have an origin story. And the thing that I don't have a fix for this, but I am really struck by the fact that this is the show it wanted to be. And I feel like the creators would admit it. But they also felt that because the way TV was ordered and considered, you needed the 8 or 9 episode runway to get here, where he's milking cows and working for John Lithgow, who I was shocked to find out was not returning for the season based on my deep watching of the first season up to episode 4.
But you know what? You're a testament to the fact that this show is I know that some people are probably like, do I have to watch all of the first season if I want to get in on the second? And it helps, but you can probably watch the summary videos.
Yes, which is quite exhaustive. But the thing is, suddenly we're it just feels unshackled. It's beautifully shot in Los Angeles in period, and it's Matthew Rhys and Juliet Rylance and Chris Chalk, 3 actors who I would watch do anything and have watched do many things.
And Shea Wiggum. Yeah.
And the great Shea Wiggum. Oh, I mean, all the people on the margins, Justin Kirk, it goes down the line.
Yeah,
but
Tommy Dewey, yeah.
But those 3 particularly in an office, fighting for good, but also drinking a lot of whiskey, I'm already sold.
Yeah.
And then there's just these things that start to come into focus, like watching Matthew Rhys milk cows while Terrence Blanchard tootled on his horn first season was nice, but felt a little bit like a luxury item. Now, when he's like sneaking around by the docks and riding his motorcycle with these big goggles like he's in Lost Highway, suddenly the jazz score is just like, yes, you are doing this to the fullest, and it feels great. It's really entertaining.
It's like you used the word luxury. It feels luxurious to me. Like the costuming, the lighting, the locations, the production design, the cinematography, like everything feels kind of like top notch. And yeah, you're right. Like you can watch Juliet Rylance like walk into a room and like pick up a piece of paper and walk out, and she's so good. So
and we should say that like the other changes were behind the scenes, right? The 2 guys that created The Nick, one of our favorite shows of the last 10 years.
Maybe in the entirety of this podcast,
possibly came in to take over season 2. A lot of other, they just got the house in order in a different way. And it makes sense. And
there's something kind of interesting about how this is an antidote to auteurist TV, because it's just like so many people have worked on this already.
Yeah.
And yet it's good.
Because it's a TV show.
Yeah.
It's ultimately, this is a gourmet cheeseburger, but maybe it's like a deconstructed cheeseburger that's like a hamburger steak, because they wouldn't pretend that it's the same thing. But it is. And through 2 episodes only, like one of the things that really impresses me is at the start of anything, particularly at the start of something that is now unshackled from an origin story with new creators coming in, that's the most fraught moment. Like you could put your arms around anything. What do you choose? And I think that the real skill of the essentially second pilot, the reboot of 201, is they chose really well. They chose a really good story that touches all the aspects of society. And you have 3 characters who traverse all aspects of society, both Perry Mason because of who he is and his background, and then Juliet Rylance's character Della, who is a closeted lesbian who also wants to be a lawyer, and Chris Chalk, who was a cop in the first season,
PI,
and is now sort of their private investigator, but as a black man has a very different relationship with systems of power in the city. They can navigate it in the way that classic mystery characters do. And I love that. The luxury thing, I do want to continue to talk about through the season because, look, as the consumer and viewer, I am not complaining. Give me this. Give me more seasons of this. Let this go. As the industry watcher that we've been masquerading as for a lot of this podcast, I'm like, this is expensive. Period is really expensive. Period that looks this good with these stars in California is wildly expensive. And it's on a Monday nights. Like, does any of it matter anymore?
Nah,
I don't know.
I don't think the Monday night thing matters.
I don't think that it does, but it is an admission that this show is never going to be a Sunday night anchor show. It just doesn't have the weight or stakes or cultural valence.
I don't know. I mean,
like,
it's like We Own the City was a Monday night show, and I guess I take your point that was
We Own the City ratings were minuscule.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they shouldn't have done it, but I'm switching hats now. Like,
I think that
viewer.
Perry Mason could appeal to people who watch Succession, and I think it could appeal to people who watch Columbo.
Yeah, this is the HBO show that if your parents watch mostly broadcast, no, this is a straw parent argument. Nobody just does this anymore. But if your tastes don't go towards the more challenging fare, there's nothing easy about the show, but you understand.
But it is a mystery. It's like, how are they going to get these guys out of this jam?
And the show knows not to reinvent the wheel. Like there's the scene where Shea Wiggum, who is having more fun doing the show than literally anyone else has ever had on a television show, is drinking beer with Perry Mason, and he's like, he just drops a fact about the case, and Rhys's wheels are spinning. Maybe we'll talk to him about the playing of the scene in the upcoming interview, but like, it does the shoe leather part. We understand the detail that gets him spinning, that, well, that means that they couldn't have done it and why, and now we're going to take the measuring tape and we're going to, like, that's what we like in these shows. It doesn't try to hide that from us or keep that from us because it's too good for it. And I think that's, when you see a show become what it wants to be, Chris, it's a good day in America.
Well, why don't we tell Matthew Rhys that we think he's done it?
I'm going to, laying down a marker for you and Kaya, I'm going to spend the first 10 minutes of our talk explaining the Beyonder and the original Secret Wars and how he became friends with Boom Boom, a
Matthew
very
Rhys,
low-powered
Ted Lasso.
mutant.
Should there be more football? Yes or no?
He'll say yes, he's Welsh.
Yeah, that's true. We'll be right back with Matthew Rhys. This episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. New Year's resolutions are fun. the first couple of weeks. Then you kind of maybe conveniently forget about them halfway through January. No shame. It happens to us all. But this year I have a foolproof plan, at least when it comes to saving money. Just switch to Mint Mobile and you're done. Goal accomplished, because for a limited time, their wireless plans are $15 a month when you buy a 3-month plan. The great thing about Mint Mobile is there's no jaw-dropping monthly bills or unexpected overages, and all plans come with unlimited talk and text. Get this new customer offer today at mintmobile.com/watch. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need. Have coverage options to protect the things you value most. File a claim right on the State Farm mobile app and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
It's hard not to add a side of hot, crispy hash browns to your favorite McDonald's breakfast. It's even harder not to eat said hash browns before you get home. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Selena Gomez founded Rare Beauty to help everyone feel good in their skin. And their new Find Comfort Body collection is doing just that. Introducing a feel-good collection of body care that calms, nourishes, and protects with hydrating formulas and uplifting scents that create little moments of comfort wherever you are. Discover Rare Beauty's new Find Comfort Fragrance Mist, Hydrating Body Lotion and Hand Cream, and the Stop and Soothe Aromatherapy Pen. Shop the full collection now, only at Sephora.
Well, as promised, we're now joined by Matthew Rhys, which is kind of just an absolute honor and a thrill. I don't know why I'm saying
for me,
kind of.
Yes. Well, thank you for the invite.
Thank you for being here.
Here's how much we like Perry Mason.
Oh, God.
And this is maybe a lot to throw on you after 45 seconds of knowing you. But Andy and I were thinking of starting a whole new career path for ourselves. It's a drive time radio show, early morning.
Yeah.
We call it AM to the PM. 365 days a year, it's just Perry Mason talk.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And Andy brought up the good point of what do we do the other 46 weeks of the year when Perry Mason isn't on?
Yeah, I'm the guy with the business head, as you can tell. You know, he's the passion guy.
Right.
And
that's why this works.
And maybe that's where you come in.
Yes.
It's just, where in the world is Perry Mason? You phone us up. You're just like, here I am.
Well, you know, depending on how long this runs for, I can give you the play-by-play.
This bit or the actual show?
No, this bit.
We've got 40 minutes.
Anyway, thanks, guys. It's been great. Yeah. So I was just wondering, like, basically, I could keep you up to date with, you know, where the scripts are, how we're doing casting, what we've got, who are the new designers in for, like, how it's, you know, where it's going.
Today I drank 4 shots of fake rye.
Yes, I get cold tea.
2 shots of real.
Yes, I like to mix it up. I ask props to keep me on my toes.
Oh, it's like Russian roulette, but with drinks.
Exactly. I'm like, don't let me know.
Does the fake whiskey have to have like a syrupy kind of like viscous consistency to work on camera, or?
What kind of whiskey do you drink, Chris?
Yes. What kind of viscosy whiskey?
Maybe I'm thinking more of like Amaros and like, like that kind of stuff.
I do enjoy this. Always like, it's almost the one thing on a set that will include every department when everyone kind of goes, that's not right. Inevitably will annoy the props department because they're like, yes, it is. And everyone goes, well, it's got air bubbles. And I can see the air bubbles. And they're like, no, you can't. I was like, yes, I can. I'm standing here.
Everyone's got a strong opinion.
Everyone's got a strong opinion about how it should look. Yeah. And if what whiskey is that if it looks like that?
Right. We're joking about AM to the PM, but our passion for the show is very strong.
Clearly.
Yeah. We're ready to just give up our entire livelihoods just for this.
I mean, AM to the PM.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a 12-month-a-year gig for you.
No, it's not. It's definitely not.
That's the whole point.
I tend to think about it about a few seconds before someone says action.
But the second season is so great so far. So I've watched 2.
I've watched 2, yeah.
Andy's watched 2. This is going up today, so it'll be before people see the second episode. But obviously, the first episode ends with a great cliffhanger and twist. With I actually know someone who knows Tommy Dewey.
Oh, wow.
And about halfway through the episode, I texted that person. I was like, this is great. Tommy's going to be the villain of the season. And he was like, is he? I thought he only worked for like a week on that show. And I was like, oh. And then the last scene of the first episode happens. I was like, oh, that was abrupt. Yeah.
You thought maybe they were so grateful to have Mr. Dewey on set, they block shot a season worth in a week.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody would describe Perry Mason as a series as being like light on its feet. Right? Because it's a heavy show. And
I am light on my feet.
But
lighthearted.
The show itself feels a little lighter on its feet in the second season, just in terms of like narrative pacing, the mechanics of it. Did you feel that was that important to you?
We had some new writers come in for season 2, and they said from the very first meeting that we do want to lighten this up. There's a gallows humor to Mason. We want to explore that. We just want. They came with a few big rules that they wanted. They wanted to open up LA, and they wanted a lightness. Yes, as you say, it is a dark show, and especially the case of season 1 was especially dark. That was a hard one to
Whenever
find.
You get babies involved,
and you kill them. It's not. It's hard to find the jokes.
I'm sure they've tried.
They tried. I tried, and they kept saying that's not very appropriate.
And they asked to bring the fake whiskey back in.
Or real whiskey. Like, shut him down. Shut him down.
But it almost feels, is it freeing to get past the origin story? In some ways.
Yes, very much so. I had not great concern, but I had a deal of concern. It's like, once you get past that, well, now what do you do? Like, do we fall into a rut? Does he now, we have the kind of Charlie's Angels moment at the end of season 1 where they're in the office, the name's on the door, off we go. And then do we just pick up and he's winning cases? Because it's not what I wanted at all.
Yeah.
And one of the other things they came in and they said, look, no, let's not start there. Let's start somewhere else, and let's start Mason somewhere else, which I was very happy about.
But to the spirit of that, the Charlie's Angels thing, there is. I'm sure that you loved working with the cows in season 1, and I love that. I have a lot of questions.
Yes,
but I'm saving them for the
AM to the PM,
the slow months.
Well, of course,
yes.
Dairy month, the AM to the PM.
Can we get a sponsorship for that?
Oh my goodness, this thing's gonna go.
This is really going to work.
Yes,
but there's something to Chris's point that I felt. The show relaxing into what it wanted to be.
Right.
You and Chris and Juliet in this room is so exciting because I'm a fan of all of your work and the characters are dynamic, and it does feel like there's a different sort of momentum. Do you credit that with the experience of having all worked together and have a sense of these characters and where you want to take them? Or did it really begin with the writer saying, this is the lens we're going to be shooting this season through?
I think a little bit of both, in that it's so great when you do come back to a second, the luxury of coming back to a second season, and you have that 6 months under your belt of knowing, how you all like to work and how you do work and how you work best. And it's great. You get all that out of the way. You have that foundation work laid. And then they kind of said, these are the conflicts we want to put within the triumvirate, so that, there's a lot going on between the three of you. It's just, it's layering the steak you're going to get your teeth into.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a little bit about Los Angeles as both a setting, but also as such a huge element of the story. Perry Mason is obviously an intimidating, iconic character in the history of American mystery culture and fiction, but LA is too. You've got the novels of James Ellroy, you've got Chinatown, you've got Raymond Chandler, it's essentially the canvas on which a lot of modern mystery has been painted anyway. What do you feel like you guys were trying to do with this season differently, and how much was the sort of reputational figure of Los Angeles as a character in these stories in the past looming over you at all?
I mean, it's hard. It does have those very kind of potent reference points, going in, and as soon as you start saying, I remember in season 1 we would say, oh, it's set in the 30s. Everyone just goes, ooh, Chinatown.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? and Tim Van Patten, who was instrumental in kind of setting up, really leaned into Chinatown. He said, yeah, he put on a screening for the entire cast and crew before we started shooting, because I want to screen Chinatown. I'm going for, let's not be ashamed of, let's, steal from the best.
I think that's cool.
Yeah, and he was right to do that. And when they said, when the initial interview I had with the whole team about season 1, and they said, we're going back to the origins of the books, we're going to put it in LA in the 30s. I just thought, 30s would be brilliant. In the little knowledge that I knew, having done some research on another project, that you just had this kind of Klondike town during the Depression that was booming and had this kind of incredible, vast wealth, cheek by jowl with abject poverty. I was like, that's great. I mean, dramaturgically, the setting is incredible. And then they loaded Mason by saying, okay, but second or third generation landowner, new world colliding. It was all fantastic. So that just at every turn, the city its evolution is lending itself in some form or another to what's going on.
There's also that wonderful thing that our dear departed friend Tommy says. I'm so sorry to harp on him, but in the season premiere, which is fundamentally true. He's raging about this for his other reasons, and he's under duress. But he says everyone wants to be here.
Yes,
and that is perpetually the thing about it. It this moment in its history, it's sort of a second class kind of town. It spiritually, people are ignoring it. Baseball teams won't come to it.
Yeah.
But it has this spark that draws people, many
Right.
different types of people seeking to reinvent themselves or chasing dreams.
Yeah.
And as you said, that's extremely potent. And I
Yeah.
love the way the show in the season, I think this was the phrase you used, throws its arms around all of it. That
Yeah.
there are shanty towns and the Mexican population, which has always been here, is now cheek by jowl up against this new money and
Yeah.
everything else that comes with it.
Yeah, and that was, it was. I have nowhere to go with it. Yeah, I was just going to agree with you.
This is a podcast not built on conflict. The episodes are very short. We often just affirm each other.
We're just like, did you watch The Mandalorian? I enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah, that happens. It's not good radio, quote unquote.
But I have to say, I feel very safe and very warm here.
And you are seen.
That's all I will. Thanks, gents.
Yeah.
It's been great. Bye.
Great.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Yes. So yes, I mean, great kudos to Rolling Jones and Ron Fitzgerald for leaning into that. They really did their research of the time immensely, as did Jack and Michael in the second season, and they got very excited. So much of season one, the case of season one, it was based tragically on a real case in Los Angeles. So this kind of the history of the place just is a gift that keeps on giving for them.
You mentioned doing research for another project, and that you had kind of been drawn into that. I was wondering, because you honestly just seem like a very interesting person, an interested person. Like, how much of the thrill of taking on any given role is wrapped up in getting to dive into learning about? I mean, I'm sure with the Americans, you must have done a fair share of like Cold War spy reading and looking into that era of history. But for Perry Mason, I mean, you could spend your whole life just going through like the greats of Los Angeles crime fiction or reading about the history of.
And that's what we'll be doing on the podcast.
Yes.
Every June.
Chavez Ravine Part 9. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, look at this. Yeah. I mean, those are the real kind of golden nuggets and the bonuses of those jobs.
Yeah.
Like the Americans, when they give you the premise, you go, oh my God, that's juicy. And for me, I've always been attracted to kind of Los Angeles is a pioneer town, and how it emerged, the way it did, and the kind of the dizzying corruption that kind of came with it in the kind of Wild West way it evolved. So yeah, that was always been, and I've always loved this. Just from a romantic point of view, I've always loved LA in the 30s and what that was, and the stories of kind of Chaplin, Errol Flynn, and Fairbanks Jr. eating at Musso and Frank's and getting arrested on Hollywood Boulevard and all that stuff. I'm like a schoolboy when it comes to
Did you get a chance to see Babylon?
No.
Yeah. It's not quite, the same era, but it's just a few years before, and it's got some of the silent film stars in it.
I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
What is your personal relationship with Los Angeles? Because you come from Wales, you live in New York now.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've been here many times, and the industry that you're in often brings you here, whether it's whether you're living here or not. What did LA mean to you as a kid growing up in a completely different country versus what it has meant to you in your relationship to it in your career?
It was, it was that golden place on the hill. It was Camelot. It was everything, and every other bad analogy I'm clawing for. But it was, in the basest terms, growing up as a small boy watching the A-Team, which this group of men, escaped to the Los Angeles Underground, which was confusing in itself.
Yeah,
it was incredibly exotic because you saw them with palm trees, you saw perennial sunshine and beaches, and then as my tastes have evolved, I like to hope, I fell in love with film. It became that place that we all, I found my group, and it was the place we all wanted to go, and we were all desperate to go and terrified of going because what if it didn't work or it didn't turn out to be what we wanted. And then, the first of us went to make Titanic, and then we were, because I'm going to go to LA afterwards. I'm like, tell us what it's like.
This is Leo DiCaprio?
Yes. No, another actor called Johan Griffith, who's in Titanic.
Yeah.
So he went out and he was like, it is true what they say. You've got to come. And then we'd start coming for pilot season. And it was... there's still elements of Los Angeles that still give me a buzz, like I'm in a movie when I see them, and it still holds that magic to me. It is like a gold mining, prospecting town where you can come and you can be one hammer hit away from whatever.
Did you ever live here?
Yeah, for 6-7 years.
Oh wow,
making brothers and sisters.
Yes, yeah. So just getting to drive onto lots. I mean, the first time I drove onto the Paramount lot, I thought I was going to cry because I couldn't.
It's pretty amazing still.
It really is. And we shot the season 1 interiors on Paramount. So I used to just ride my bicycle around looking at sound stages and pretending I was Bob Evans.
Did you continue to pretend to be Bob Evans later in the day?
Yes.
That could get dicey.
What time is the right time to stop being Bob Evans in a day?
There is no question. Yeah, usually when the sun goes down or when a police officer is telling you off.
These sunglasses are prescriptions.
Yes. My apologies.
So what is the process? I mean, the show looks beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just, especially, I don't know if it's just, having sunk into the first season, it's just sumptuous, some of the sets that we've seen already in this season.
Yeah.
And the location shooting is so clever. And because so much of the bones of that LA are still here, they're just maybe underappreciated or not seen.
Yeah.
What is that process like coming to set? I mean, this is we don't do many the town. I'm in this town. There's fewer and fewer period pieces being shot. It's very expensive. It's very taxing.
Yes.
You've got all of it happening. So what is the experience like wandering into a place that maybe you'd been before as a civilian or as a different time of your life, and suddenly it's 1930, I want to say 2?
Yeah, 33.
I meant 3. I was testing you guys.
Yeah, I think, we went from 32 into 33.
For me, it's still 32.
Yeah, I know.
I'm a stickler.
That's classic Mason.
Well, of course. Yeah, he lives his life like it's 32.
Well,
yeah. I'm incredible. I'm like a giddy schoolboy. There was the New Year's Eve party in season 1 when I walked in and kind of was a gaper. I felt like I could see Douglas Fairbanks Jr. or Edelfin at any given moment. That is the beauty of HBO, and I will salute them till the day I pass, that they just go for it, that they're willing to write those checks in order to make those productions look how they should. And you walk into these wildly extravagant sets that have taken so long to be built, and they're dressed, every inch is dressed, every background artist the same, and it only aids you as an actor.
Yeah.
There's no suspension. You can just believe that you're in that place at that time. There are a couple of other instances. One, like the first time I went to Musso and Frank's on Hollywood Boulevard. For those who don't know, it's one, if I'm not wrong, one of the old, if not the oldest.
It's the iconic steakhouse. Yeah.
Yes, that's on Hollywood Boulevard that was frequented by the golden age of silent movie stars. And I remember going there for the first time. So then when I returned, and we took it over for Mason, and they dressed it, and I walked in, and I just went, I had that moment.
Magic.
It was magic, and it's rare these days that you have exactly that, these moments of magic of why you got into it, of sitting in a dark cinema going, oh my God, that looks incredible.
I think that's the beauty of the show this season. It's just the title cards, the detail. I've spent an episode when you're in the courtroom staring at the faces that they found in 2022 to be on the jury.
Yes.
And I'm like, what are these guys doing the rest of the year? We'll find out on our podcast. But these are faces from the 30s. They've done it. And I imagine walking into that room, you've got a full set.
Well, there's even I can't remember if it's 1 or 2, but there's a quick scene where it's you, Justin Kirk, and Juliet Rylance, and you're in either not the City Hall building or
it's the drink after
the drink after, and it's just like, where is that? I'm sure it's like a bank downtown or someplace, but the way that you guys have it done, and it's so alive. Like there's so much background action and stuff like happening.
But it's also like that's the budget of a small movie for you to be like, I'm tired of having this whiskey and leaving.
Yes.
Now that's great.
It really is. Like every department was just meticulous in their execution. There was the other time I was very fortunate. When I lived in LA, I used to own horses and kept them in Griffith Park in
that's a
Sunset Ranch.
You can't just drop that on
us.
No,
I'm going to. I just
back.
did. Yes,
we're circling back.
This I'm looking from the AM to the PM. Just doing the horse episode. And we went back to Sunset. They took over Sunset Ranch, and because Beechwood Canyon was meant to be this kind of this alpine village for the movie stars, and that was going to be their stable. So they dressed Sunset Ranch, and I had the same thing walking to Musso and Frank's, where you just saw all these people dressed that way, and I just, for a moment, I could believe I was in the 30s.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could still see it. Like, we used to work, our old office was in the Sunset Gower Studios.
Oh, wow.
And I think our boss's office, I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but his office was Frank Capra's old office. Now, I think they've done some stuff to the office itself, but maybe that's where he was. Yeah, they had some air conditioning. And then, Gower Gulch there, that's basically, I think, where they would just do all the cowboy stuff, all the Western stuff. It's amazing.
It really, are either of you two Angelinos?
No, we're both from East Philadelphia.
Oh,
East Coast.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. What was LA for you growing up?
I was always incredibly skeptical about it and came out here for work, and even now go through, I think, multi-year cycles of liking it to loving it to hating it.
How long have you been here?
11 years.
Right.
Yeah. And then he came out a little bit later.
Yeah, we were
both
New Yorkers for a long time, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
No way.
When I visited the Americans thing, I would walk from my apartment to set. It was a dream.
Oh, wow.
And but I always thought this was maybe similar to you, like a completely made up place.
Yeah.
And then incredibly romantic because of that. Whether it's from fiction or movies. But then you'd come out here and nothing makes sense and everything feels kind of good. But then when night falls and the air smells like flowers and there's palm trees, there's this sense of possibility that maybe people doing the reverse to New York might feel in the city, but it just felt so alien that it was intoxicating.
And you get 35 minutes of traffic to drive 6 blocks. Yeah.
Yep. But then you get out of the car and it smells like flowers again. I'm still charmed.
Really?
I don't want to
how long have you been here
cold
now?
ever again. I think I tell people, my first impulse is to say 2 years, but it's been 6. Wow. Because there's no sense of time anymore.
Right. No, there isn't. That was the other thing.
It really isn't.
Yeah.
It's very confusing.
Yeah.
But I do love it.
So I wanted to ask you, this is maybe a little bit of a high concept question, but one of the things that's interesting about this first episode, especially with Perry, is this trepidation he has about getting back into criminal law, and obviously has scar tissue from the first case that he handled in the previous season.
Yeah.
And I think obviously is like traumatized by that, but also knows it's destructive for people around him to be around him when he's going through those cases.
Yeah.
And to not put too fine a point about it, I wondered if there's any ever similarities to choosing roles and whether or not you ever have trepidation, even with somebody like a character like Perry, where you're like, it's going to be like a dark suit to wear for a long time.
Yeah. No, yes. The short answer is yes. There's always trepidation for many different reasons. But I'm always won over by if the script is there, I'm won over.
Yeah.
If I want to know what happens at the end, if you're invested, all the usual cliches. But also when they pitched Mason, they said, look, we're going to load his bases. He's going to be a World War I veteran, struggling to keep the family's farm, blah, blah, blah. And everything they said, I was like, with every fact they gave me about what they were going to do to his backstory, I was like, I'm in deeper. I'm definitely in. I'm in over my head. What do I do now? Yeah. So it was just, those kind of parts don't come a long way.
It's like a tractor beam. Like,
oh my God. Yeah. There's so much to be playing at any one time. How he's alienated within his own city, the beginning, and the change he's witnessing, and it was just everything, and continues to be. There's I love that when they said, look, he's going to be suffering from some serious imposter syndrome, did he do the right decision? Haunted by what's happened. I was like, okay, great. This is exactly where we should be picking up.
Also, Chris, this is an adventurous man. He owned horses.
That's right.
Which he's tried to distract us from for the last 4 minutes.
So are we talking
answers.
about casual riding around Griffith Park horses, or take him to?
No, they were casual. I bought 2 Mustangs out of the prison program. The US
horses were in prison.
They were. I got them. I got them out of.
Do?
They didn't do anything.
Did you do this as Perry Mason? Like you got them? You sprung them?
I did. I did. Come on, guys, we're getting out of here.
Equine law.
Yeah. No, there's about 5 or 6 prisons in the US that have a wild Mustang program where they take, because the BLM is struggling with Mustang numbers, so prisons take in wild Mustang and then they rehabilitate inmates with the horse at the same time. So the horse,
it's like equine therapy almost.
It's incredible. Okay. I watched it firsthand. It really is incredible. And then they're given 90 days to kind of gentle the horse, and then at the end of 3 months they sell. So I went. Have you ever seen Notting Hill?
Yeah.
Remember when Hugh Grant says, "I'm here with Horse and Hound"? A friend of mine worked for Horse and Hound and called me up and said, "Look, we can't afford to come to Carson, Nevada."
Times have been tough since Notting Hill.
Yes.
Kind of threw the spotlight on Horse and Hound.
Well, yes, it mocked them in a cruel way. She said, would you be interested in going to Carson, Nevada to do write an article for Horse and Hound? I was like, yeah. So I went. I'd loved horses and ridden horses. So I went and I saw this one Native American gentleman came out with he trained 2 horses, and then I found myself with my hand in the air bidding on them as my friend's going, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Where are you going to keep these horses?"
And do you still have the horses?
I don't. Sadly, one passed away, and then one is now living the life of Riley in Malibu.
Okay.
Incredible. This also reminds me that there was a period when you were very busy with the Americans, and then you suddenly showed up on The Bastard Executioner. I believe, was that on horseback?
No. I did ask. They were like, the classic.
Because I got a horse. If you guys need me.
Yes.
It's a tax write-off then, if you bring your own horse.
Yes. I'll bring my own. Yeah. We shot that in Wales at home, actually, ironically. But yeah, no, that was a classic moment where an actor goes, "Of course I can ride a horse." And for once, production went, "He's lying."
This guy.
Yeah, forget it.
It does seem like we're in a new era of horses. I mean, like, as I was thinking when you were talking about the Banshees from Inisherin, the donkey in that film is now been given like a lifetime like retirement gift from Martin McDonagh.
No way.
Yeah, and I was like, man, maybe it pays to be a 4-legged animal in Hollywood these days.
Yeah.
Wow. It's reparations
better than a
401k.
I think
historically.
I don't
think Mr. Ed was given a pension.
No.
I mean, there was not
turned into glue.
I do have to ask, because there's a through line here. We've noticed that you say yes to things, which is probably a very good attitude for an actor in scene work and things. But you said you suddenly found yourself owning horses.
Yeah.
Just before we sat down with you, I was in a meeting and I mentioned that you were coming in to do a podcast with us. And the person said, "I've been on his boat." And I said, "Excuse me? This is a very busy actor." Who's
been on my boat?
A producer named Michael Peretz, and he says, I don't know him, but some friends, we went on a charter and he says, "I think Matthew Rhys owns Ernest Hemingway's boat or something." And so I said, "This is incredible." He said, "By the way, tell him 5 stars. Best afternoon they've had in a while."
Oh, great. I'm glad to hear.
But I then immediately Googled Matthew Rhys boat.
Yeah.
It didn't autofill that. It said horse was the suggestion, but it said boat. And then I read this incredible article, I hope our listeners find as well, in the New York Times.
Yeah.
About you can tell it better than I can, but you have a boat. You just bought a boat.
God. Well, I've actually bought it 5 years ago. I was foolishly and drunkenly scrolling, as I am wont to do, kind of looking at boats online, some for sale. And then I came across. Do
you just Google boats and see what happens?
Yeah, no, I do the usual, the classics. I even look at eBay sometimes. Because you have these weird and wonderful boats pop up on eBay. And I was on eBay one late night drinking. And a Wheeler Playmate popped up, which was the same class of boat that Hemingway had. And I knew they were built in Brooklyn. There's not many of them left. They were built in the 30s. And there was one for sale, relatively reasonably priced for what it was. And in this mad moment, I bought it. And I had these giddy, rose-tinted notions that I would bring this wooden boat back to Brooklyn, back to life, and people could go aboard and have a 1930s experience on a boat that was built in Brooklyn, circumnavigate the Statue of Liberty while drinking Hemingway's favorite cocktail.
This is lovely. But now I don't want to. Actually, I was going to say I don't want to make this a maritime podcast. I do. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, like, this is the rose-tinted version.
Yes.
And you're feeling warm. You're having a drink.
Yes.
You've done this thing.
Yeah.
When does the hangover start?
Yeah, when does the cold
like,
splash of water
Like, I'm going to have
hit?
to, my wife is sleeping upstairs. I'm going to have to say, honey, I bought a boat. Like,
Yes.
What is the psychology of this?
The next morning that was pretty much, there was a lot of kind of,
funny story.
boats.
Historically, a great investment.
Yes. Yes. There was a lot of bear with me. Bear with me.
What if I
Does
told
the
you
voice
it
get
was
high?
wooden?
Yeah.
It was octaves. Octaves were being scaled.
My cousin's husband does a thing that she would call the airplane coming in for landing, where he gets a little high when he's apologizing. And
yes.
Okay.
There was a lot.
You remember you told me Farewell to Arms is your favorite novel? Well,
there are a lot of ways into this.
Farewell to me. Yes. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the site? Do you like cars?
I'll take a look.
He's a boat
have you ever
guy.
heard of Bring a Trailer?
No.
So this is a site that essentially, in a lot of cases, the price of the car is that you have to then go get it,
Right.
But the cars are like 1983 BMW with 375,000 miles and bullet holes. And you're just like, but I can see the promise.
Yes.
And I've spent so many nights at 12:45 just like
Click.
almost,
clicking.
Wow.
They had like the Frank Ocean BMW, the orange one was on there. Like it's like sometimes you'll just come across and you're like, that's Sonny Crockett's Lamborghini. Like I don't know how this is happening, but it's like completely broken down. You have to go get it and then you invest into into refurbishing it.
I Google sports scores today, and I don't. You guys are incredibly romantic. But okay, so you have this boat,
Yeah.
and it's not as it was a multi-year process.
It was it wasn't meant to be. I had a wooden boat shipwright picked out to do it. He couldn't do it. Got another one. He couldn't do it. And at this point, I had this incredible captain who runs the business. She said, "Look, there's enough YouTube videos out there. You and me can restore this boat." And I was like,
God, what does it feel like to have someone say that to you? I live my whole life dreaming of that.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Because I played a carpenter once. Yeah, there was a lot of that.
Right.
And God bless her, Captain Kelly Farwell. She was the one who kind of went, look, this is what we do. This is how we do it. And we took 3 years to restore her.
Did it become like fun? Did it become like something you really know?
No, it was never, ever fun.
Okay.
It was a lot of tears on my behalf because when I would go, I can't do this. And you'd be like, put yourself together. Yeah.
But now you have a boat.
Now I have a boat.
This guy's been on it.
I know. People charter the boat and go out and have cocktails and listen to gramophone records in New York Harbor.
Sounds amazing.
All I do when we're chartering is I just wait for Captain Kelly to call me going, we're going down and the water's coming in the bow from that bit you did.
Would you just quietly put the phone down at that point and say, let's continue the scene?
I'd be like,
Chris and Juliet.
Don't call me set. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about your castmates on Perry Mason?
Yes, absolutely.
It's just an awesome ensemble.
Yes.
And there's one person in particular, I think we'll go through a couple, but I want to talk to you about Shea Wiggum.
Oh.
Does Shea Wiggum know that he was born to be in Perry Mason and to be walking around in those clothes, smoking rolled up cigarettes? And
I've never seen anyone having more fun at anything in my life than him eating or drinking on your show.
Oh my God. No one, I said to him, you should do a course at NYU just called Eating and Drinking for Film and Television.
Yes.
Or Smoking for Film and Television.
Who does it better?
This is what I'll say to Shea Wiggum and his dedication. He will smoke when he's doing off lines. And I'm like,
Chris would do that right now.
I was like, the camera can't see you. He goes, I know. He's amazing.
That's a really good Shea Wiggum.
I relish those scenes with him because no one, like he views these episodes like meals, rich meals to be devoured. And the relish in him, it ignites in me because no one does it.
He does stuff like where there's the scene he does with, I think with Chris actually, and he walks off and like, I'm just like, it's just an exit, it's like nothing real, but I'm like, he knows exactly how to walk off.
Yeah.
This is unreal, man. Like he just seems like he was born to be in these scenes.
I would never want to share a meal with him, because if he didn't tuck his napkin
oh my God,
violently into his collar, then what are we doing?
No, nothing. There's no point eating.
It'd be insulting.
No, the days when it was him, me, and Lithgow, it would just gold, and sometimes we couldn't do it because we were laughing so hard.
Who's making everyone break? Is it him?
No, that was a round robin. Yeah. That was a beautiful triumvirate of corpses who were just, as when the glint comes into the eye, we're gone. Because I'll give it to Wiggum. He will stay the course.
Yeah.
When the world is collapsing around him, he can stay. He is not distracted. But for some reason, the chemistry of me, him, and Lithgow was.
That's great.
Not great.
I mean, there's so many people I would want. I mean, one of the things with Wiggum was there's a scene that Andy and I were actually talking about on the pod before you dropped by, but it's just Perry is fishing a little bit. Like he's sort of, he's got Shay's character over, and they're just
talking about horse diving, which has an
horse
emotional
diving.
valence for you that I think I didn't realize. I'm going to rewatch the scene.
Yes, yeah, well, yeah, it has a deeper resonance for me.
Because it's got a body of water and a horse.
I mean, it's everything. Like, could the horse land on the boat? if he could land on a boat, it would be everything.
I can imagine you going home to your wife and saying, "So I just had this vision. That, what if horses want to be on the water?
Yes. What if the horse on my boat?
Are we charging too much for this boat service? Could we just offer it as equine therapy for the horses?
Yes, yeah. Could people sit on the horse while on the boat?
But it's this great moment where Perry is almost becoming Perry despite himself. Like he kind of wants to just sit there and have a drink with his friend, but he's also lightly probing about, hey, you know how tall this guy was, or was he a lefty? And like, where do they have the car? And like these little bits, and it's just such a wonderful moment of like coming back into that character.
It's actually also, I think, something that I have loved for a while now in your acting, which is it was always present in the Americans too. You can see a methodical mind at work between the lines and selling that, that you're thinking of something, and you can feel the gears turning, and the audience is made welcome into that process. Like you're not ahead of us, and you're not telegraphing, but we're going on that journey. It's a very, I feel like there's a question in here about a very specific and subtle type of acting that I don't even know how I would phrase it. Right?
I don't even know if I could explain it.
But you're present in the moment, I guess. But you're doing, because we talked about it earlier in the podcast, and the concept of like the shoe leather of the show, which I'm so happy that it embraces. You're going to go A to B to C with the case. But you're doing that even before the next scene begins with Perry's mind.
Right, and listen, to me, that's all in the writing. They're just teeing it up. But it's one of the beauties, I think, of having it in the time period that we are, and that I love, and it's what I used to love in those old, in those old kind of crime series, is that you are with the protagonist as he is figuring it all out. Like technology's out the window, and we're gonna be with him.
He's got to get his tape measure out.
He's got to get the tape measure out.
Yeah,
I love all that. I just think it goes back to what it should be, where the audiences feel part of it.
Yeah, I think Perry Mason with an iPhone would be pretty short.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is, oh, yeah. Oh, Mason would throw that thing, at a wall or Wiggum very quickly.
Yeah, or he'd have like an Apple Newton, right? Like a slightly out of date.
Yeah,
that's right.
Would be a little more vintage.
Yeah. Dallas, like, when are you getting rid of the flip phone?
Exactly.
Did you have anything else you wanted to do?
Well, I just, is this the sort of, so the idea of Perry Mason, it's been, for the previous actor, for Raymond Burr, who played the part, he played it for decades.
Yeah.
There's a world where this show, we just get to have more and more and more of it. Is that, this is in the hands of HBO and the creators, and it's a very different TV moment.
Yes.
But is there a world where you would enjoy returning to it again and again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. As gratifying as it is, and it is, incredibly. Absolutely. My thing, maybe, it's a lot of actors want this, and sometimes it's a little spoiled to want it. But if we keep twisting on this theme, I'm in for, till kingdom come.
Well, I mean, Los Angeles is this great bounty for you, right?
Oh.
I mean, I was reading some of the, and I think to go deep into them would probably give away some of the stuff from the second season, but about some of the real life historical figures that are being mirrored on the show, and the McCutcheon family and who their analogs are. And I'm just like, wow, man, like you could make 10 seasons before World War II about some of this stuff. It's wild.
Yes. Like I said, the research that they've been bringing up, you could literally just take it from the history books. It's unbelievable.
So the only thing that would stop us from wanting endless seasons of Perry Mason, because it is right in our wheelhouse. It's the world that we love. It's the type of storytelling that we love. would it keep you from future seasons of The Wine Show? Because that's, I'm going to speak for, I'll use I statements as I learned in college. That's the show for me.
Yeah. Well, funny you should say that, because my mother said, I think it's probably the best thing you've ever done. And she said it with absolute sincerity. In fact, after season 1, I got offered a part in the Post, Steven Spielberg, Mel Streep and Tom Hanks. So I couldn't do the second season of The Wine Show. So I called my mother. I said, I got good news and bad news. Good, what's the good news? I've been offered a film with Steven Spielberg, and in the film is Mel Streep and Tom Hanks. Oh, that's incredible. What's the bad news? Well, bad news is, I can't do The Wine Show. She went, oh no!
It would have been amazing, though, if you'd shown up to the Post set and acted like a big diva because you were so mad that you were missing out on The Wine Show.
Yeah. Or if I'd bought them, The Wine Show people, to the set, and we were doing bits from the set.
There's just some things that I feel like when people use whatever power they've accrued for good. And for me, the good is I'm going to just drink wine with my friends.
Yes. Yeah.
You're doing it right. And thank you for your service in that regard.
It's the least my liver can do. But what I love was that Matthew Good's brother-in-law, who's a very successful TV producer, been trying to get a wine show made for a long time. And Matthew called me up with this idea. He goes, listen, we've got this great idea for a TV show. Hang on, let me just put it
Did he do this in Robert Evans' voice? Or was
kind of.
Yeah.
He's like Robert Evans anyway. Yeah. But then his brother-in-law said, look, it's very simple. I'm going to have someone who knows what they're talking about and 2 monkeys to drink wine. Do you want to do it, yes or no?
And you're like, am I the monkey?
Yeah, am I the monkey? He's like, of course you are, you're an actor. And I was like, oh, right. Okay, then. So, the premise was simple. As are we.
It's beautiful.
Well, we hope we get more of that. We hope we get more of Perry Mason. But thank you so much for coming by
Not
today.
at all. It's been a real treat.
We can't wait to talk to you for the next 12 months.
I'm looking forward to it.
On a regular basis.
AM to the PM.
This is the beginning of something beautiful.
I love it. Onward to glory.
Thank you.
Thanks.